So I appreciate that Canadians have a lot of questions about how their food is grown and what's happening on modern farms today, and I'm up for the challenge. Less than 2% of Canadians are farmers. So it's our job to share these great stories about growing food with the rest of the population. And I think it's important we do that to help subside some of the fear that consumers have about the food that they're buying.
For over 11 years now.
Farmed here, grew up on this quarter section that my dad had. Started farming on my own in 1980.
2022, we'll be celebrating the 100-year anniversary of this farm.
The Nagels have been farming in the Mossbank area for more than 100 years. Some of the land we farm today has been in this family that long.
We've been farming for 200 years this year. I'm a 7th generation farmer.
Effectively, we seed as soon as we can seed without frost, and we seed as much of our crop as early as we can because we want to capture that early spring moisture, which is incredibly important here on the prairies. After we're done our spring seeding operation, we quickly move into weed management in our crop. So we're spraying for a couple, 3-4 weeks, and then we transition into managing disease. And that's all scouted, of course, and you know, using some of the predictive tools that are out there to determine when we need to use a fungicide and when we don't. Throughout that entire time period, we're also managing insect pests. So scouting for insects and beneficial insects, and then again using the support tools to help us decide, do we need to take an action to control these pests, or are the crop rotation actions that we've used adequate? Another thing that we manage through that time is looking at market opportunities, which is really a 12-month a year. We had about a third of our crop marketed before we even put it in the ground, because that way we ensured that we had A, cash flow, but B, we were growing crops at a profitable price. We then move into harvest, and harvest is payday. And that's an exciting time of the year that is also stressful. But we harvest, you know, starting in August and ending often when it snows. And then throughout the winter, we spend our time marketing grain, doing books, hauling grain, repairing equipment, and all that sort of thing.
So I appreciate that the terms factory farm and corporate farm can be kind of scary, and there's a lot of people worried about that. And the truth is 97% of Canadian farms are family owned and operated, including our farm. Now, full disclosure, we are a corporate farm and we incorporated for business and tax reasons. But I want to assure people that this corporate family farm has really strong values. And for generations, we have cared deeply about taking care of the land and making good decisions for the next generation. So when you hear the term corporate farm, rest assured that in Canada, we have a strong family farm system.
Well, we always reinvest in the farm. I'll give a little story. When I was, I think I was about 19 years old, and I was working for a dealership, and I took an auger out to a guy, delivered an auger to a guy, and he was ready to retire. And I asked him, I says, why are you buying an auger? You're ready to retire. And he looked at me and he said, if you stand still, you're going backwards.
If you talk to my kids, they want the newest and latest technology when it comes to their devices or their toys. And farmers are the same. We always want new innovation. Sometimes that innovation comes in the form of new equipment. Sometimes that innovation comes in the form of plant technology. So when we're choosing which seeds to grow in the field, we want a seed that's been researched and developed and has new innovation behind it. That gives us the best start to the year.
For the grain technology access on our farm, what is most important for us is the accessibility to it, because we are in an international market. So we are very close to the United States and the Canadian West, if we want to market in the same market as they are, we must have the tools. We also are in competition with Brazil and Argentina that may have 3 harvests in 1 year. We only have one very short period of harvesting and growing season, so we must make really the best of it. So the technology is one very high-speed access for us to the market and a chance to get the better of what we grow.
Plant technology, both GM and conventionally bred, are critically important for us. And without access to the newest varieties, we can't compete throughout the world. And we'll use oilseeds for an example. Canada competes with our canola and our soybeans against palm oil and corn oil and other oils from all over the world. And they're accessing the latest technology. And if we don't access that technology or better technology, we fall behind. And if we fall behind, we can't successfully run a farming operation and we can't have a successful agriculture industry in the country.
Them inserting genes into the crop has helped as far as not having to apply insecticides in some cases. You know, the European corn borer was a prime example where BT corn has come in, and we've been able to manage European corn borer without having to spray insecticides. And one of the big things with it was that it would start to reduce your stalk standability, and it would also start to reduce how hardy your cob was on how it would hang on the plant. And so if you drive through your field with a combine and all the ears are laying on the ground, it's very difficult to pick them up. So in that situation, it's basically a total loss when that happens. So we need to make sure that those types of genetics are blended in. We need to pick things for certain attributes that we want, but at the same time being able to continue to build our yield, because that's where the payment comes for us.
Donc voilà, à la ferme, on utilise 100% du maïs en fait qu'on sème et du maïs de type OGM. On a fait cette décision-là de manière tout à fait posée et étudiée là, également. C'est principalement parce que la majorité de la technologie des études est en arrière aussi de ces maïs-là. Donc, veut pas, d'année après année, on a une augmentation de rendement. Puis c'est bien entendu la technologie. Si on comparait un auto d'il y a 10 ans avec un auto d'aujourd'hui, ce ne serait pas nécessairement la même chose, mais c'est la même chose au niveau des avancées technologiques dans les plantes. Donc, on veut profiter au maximum de la science, puis le but, c'est de maximiser puis de prendre soin de nos sols. Donc, avec la même plante, on est capable de faire beaucoup plus, puis avec pourtant les mêmes intrants.
And lately, one of the biggest buzzwords is sustainability. And everybody is fighting to come up with a new definition of sustainability. And I find it a bit odd. This farm has celebrated 100 years farming the same land. So sustainability is just part of what we do. And farmers get a bit challenged, maybe even a little bit defensive when we're asked with a microphone, what does your farm do to be sustainable? Every year, we have to make decisions that are good for the next year, good for the next generation. So sustainability is part of what we do each and every day.
Applique des pesticides, en fait, on est vraiment aux premières lignes parce que c'est une grande responsabilité de l'utiliser. C'est aussi un grand privilège, entre autres, parce qu'on a une parcelle de maraîcher à côté qui est en polyculture, donc petite surface. Puis on voit le travail sans relâche que c'est de tenir les mauvaises herbes éloignées. D'ailleurs, il y a même une partie qu'on l'a échappée, c'est carrément irrécupérable. Donc, c'est définitivement sur les grands champs, c'est un privilège de pouvoir utiliser les pesticides. C'est un outil incomparable, surtout quand c'est bien utilisé, c'est important. Et puis, comme je disais, on est les premiers, on ne donne pas des employés la responsabilité d'appliquer les pesticides. C'est vraiment mon mari ou mon père qui a les cartes aussi pour les faire et qui prend la pleine responsabilité de ça. Donc, c'est certain que moi, quand je magasine les intrants et qu'on les achète, on prend toujours ce qui est le plus sécuritaire parce que c'est mon mari qui est aux premières lignes. Puis, c'est pas nécessairement non plus une décision. C'est un consensus dans le conseil d'administration. Donc, c'est sûr que la sécurité passe en premier. C'est pas dans notre intérêt, de toute façon, de polluer nos sols non plus, parce que la nappe phréatique qui est sous mes champs, c'est aussi la même nappe phréatique qui est pour ma maison, qui va abreuver mes enfants, moi-même, et puis tous les champs autour. Si ça coule même dans les rivières, sans aller jusqu'à la nappe phréatique, bien, c'est la rivière que mes enfants vont jouer à tous les jours. Donc, c'est vraiment important pour nous. C'est pour ça aussi qu'on fait des engrais verts. Le but, c'est vraiment de protéger que ce qui est au sol, c'est ce qui est nécessaire. Ce qu'on applique, c'est ce qui est nécessaire pour la culture, puis pour la pérennité de l'entreprise. Mais il faut absolument que ce soit sécuritaire pour l'utilisateur autant que pour les gens autour. Sinon ça ne pourrait pas fonctionner.
So we use crop protection products on this farm. We use fungicides, we use herbicides, we use pesticides. And we do that in the most efficient way that we can. To be really honest, these products are expensive. So we don't want to use them when we don't have to. So we try to be very specific about the products we choose, the timing of those products, and the amount. And listen, farms are so technologically advanced today that we have access to equipment that allows us to put those products on at the right volumes and at the right time.
Sustainability to me means I am able to keep my farm growing, both economically and agronomically. Economically is easy to figure out. I got to pay the bills at the end of the day. I have to make enough money to reinvest in new technologies in order to keep improving. Agronomically, sustainability means managing the land properly so that it's healthy for the crops to grow in.
So I think when we think about sustainability, we need to take a long-term view on it. And when we look back at the production practices that my great-grandfather did, were they perfect? No. But were they the best of the day? Yes. And I think we hold the same responsibility today to not be perfect, but to do the best we can with the tools that we have today, so that when 100 years from now, the next generation or two generations of farmers look at us, we responsibly stewarded the soil we had. We looked after the environment. We produced a living that we could raise our family on. And we did all of that using the best technology of the day.
What I look at sustainability for myself is right now, this farm has been in our family for 100 years. And to be sustainable, I want to keep this farm in our family for another 100 years. So being able to do that, I have to do practices that will keep this farm going, and will be able to pass this farm on to my daughters in the future.
For sustainability for me also means, you need to look after land that maybe is a little more susceptible to erosion or other things that are not as good for the environment. So on our farm, we have actually taken steps to sow those areas down to perennial cover. We've developed riparian zones along the river that crosses through our land. We've actually taken some fields out of production just simply because we found they weren't well suited sustainably for agriculture. And while there's a cost to us for that, the cost of eroding those soils and not being able to pass them on to future farmers is far greater.
Well, sustainability, in my view, is as it was. We always look forward. As farmers, we never look backwards. I mean, that's farming changes every year and gets better and better. So why would we look backwards? I don't want to be as good as I was yesterday. I want to be better for tomorrow.
So once harvest is over and farmers have got all that grain from the field into a bin, there's a monstrous effort that has to take place to move that grain from here in Mossbank, Saskatchewan to its final destination. And that includes trucking. So we have to truck it from the farm to an elevator. It goes in an elevator and onto a train. The train will take it from here all the way to Vancouver, and it goes on a vessel at port over oceans to its final destination. So you can imagine that the supply chain must run as efficiently as possible for us to make that smooth transition from the farm to its final destination. And farmers are at risk of a lot of things that can happen in that value chain through that season. So some examples just from this past year would be the rail blockades that shut down the rail lines. We also had a labor strike through the CN rail, and we had an increase of oil shipments moved onto the rail. So grain typically competes with other commodities on our rail system, and when you have additional obstacles to overcome, like blockades and terrible winter weather in Vancouver, it creates a bottleneck. which challenges our opportunity to get our commodity to market at the right time and makes us less reliable.
I think in this big global world that we're in today, the trade barriers are becoming more and more apparent in the last 5 to 6 years. We have a lot of free trade agreements with a lot of different countries now, but sometimes, depending if it suits their farmers or their government at the time, there is tariffs that are thrown up to block us. And obviously, you know, the biggest one that we hear about all the time is China, right?
So we've had a couple market access shocks during recent memory that have affected our farm. Certainly the China banning exports of canola has hurt us. It probably knocked 50 cents to $1 off the price, which immediately hits your bottom line, but it also hurt our ability to deliver and be able to make cash flow. So price and cash flow were both impacted by that. Similarly, in the lentil market, we're seed growers for lentils, so our market is local farmers. But as lentils became less attractive to grow, our ability to sell that seed decreased as well. So both of those market impacts that seem like they're a long ways away and maybe don't translate directly to the farm, absolutely translated to the farm and to our bottom line.
Canada was often known to be the breadbasket of the world. We were known for growing really good quality wheat, and I think we still are. But over the last several decades, we've diversified, and now we grow a lot of different crops, including things like pulses. So, for example, we are the world's largest producer and exporters of peas. We're also a really major player with the lentil markets. Chickpeas, I think we're a top 5 exporter, which is something to be proud of. And our canola gets exported to US and China. But it's important to me as a farmer that we're always exploring new markets. So we've been a bit reliant on a select few markets, and it's important that we continue to explore building relationships with other countries so that we always have opportunity to sell what we grow.
And I think Canada has a lot to offer that, let's say, our neighbor United States have not. And in the grain market, we can do very specialized product, a very good quality, and in a good quantity instead of United States like doing mass, bulk, usual grain. We can do better than that. So the measure are there, the environmental fit, is there. So maybe now just help us sell better.
So as a farmer in the middle of Saskatchewan, where there are very few people and we produce a lot of food, we have to think about international markets. And sometimes that means the US, but sometimes that means China, India, various places around the world. So being able to access those markets is absolutely critical because Canadians can't consume all of the goods that we produce. So we're absolutely dependent on being able to access those markets, but being able to access them at a competitive price.
That market access is very important for us to be able to make sure that we have the markets that we have, as well as being able to develop new ones if they're available.
I think this global pandemic has brought a sense of protectionism amongst a lot of countries. And my concern is that those countries will use that protectionist measure, that protectionist feeling, and be less open to trade. And from my perspective, if the question is, how can we recover from the COVID pandemic? The answer is a strong agricultural trade policy.
For us, we're working with the season, with the weather. So when something is ready to put in soil, it's right now we've got a window of maximum 10 days, optimum 10 days to sow the corn, let's say. 24-hour round the clock, and the only thing that can stop us is the weather. Farming is not the same work as it was. It's a lot of management, and I think as a young farmer, I would like to be considered as a businesswoman as much as a farmer. It's the two things now works together, because if you're not a good business person, you cannot now, with the size of the farm, with the international market, operate nicely a farm.
Farmers are optimists forever, and we do what we have to do to get the crop in. We pride ourselves in feeding the world, and we do what we have to do to feed the world.
I buy my food the same place everybody else does. I go to the grocery store, you know. So I expect and I want the same quality I think everybody else wants. At the same time, I also realize in order to do that, it's got to start with safety or food safety on the farm. So, you know, and I guess what I'd like everybody to know that we want to grow the safest product and the best product possible because we're buying the same end product. You know, like I want to produce something good for other people, but at the same time, I'm, I guess, a little selfish. I want it for me and my family also.